Scout Sisters. We are back with our fourth step of Cadet New Cuisines. Today we are going to try, let's see, step 4 says cook a dish that makes a statement. So our choices are take a processed food you love and make a homemade version, choose a veggie protein and find a recipe that features it, or try a recipe for a special diet. Today we've chosen to try a recipe for a special diet. Since we have so many people around us that are gluten-free, we are going to try and make gluten-free banana bread. So I am using an original Betty Crocker recipe from my very old Betty Crocker book, and instead of using our regular white flour, we're going to use gluten-free flour. We've already preheated our oven to 350 degrees. It is ready for us. So we are going to start mixing and mashing up our bananas. So for this recipe, it says that we need 1.5 cups of banana, or approximately 3 medium bananas. My bananas have been sitting on the counter getting nice and ripe for about a week and a half. And I am just going to peel them and drop them into the bowl. And these are very, very ripe. Now I like my banana bread with a lot of extra banana, and we're also not including the nuts that are called for in the recipe because we have so many friends around us now that have nut allergies. I leave that ingredient out most of the time, especially if I'm making it for a large group, just to ensure that everyone that wants to eat banana bread can eat banana bread. Okay, so we're going to start making our banana bread. Our recipe calls for 1 cup of sugar. Put that in my bowl. And then 1/3 cup of softened butter or margarine. I'm going to use real butter because I prefer to use real butter in baking. On the sides of the butter stick, there are some very helpful little markers. It marks it off by tablespoons, but it also gives you some measurements. So I know for 1/3 cup butter, I need 5 1/3 tablespoons. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm gonna guess that's about 1/3. Remainder over there. And then I'm gonna mix that, got that right in here with my sugar. Gonna have to cream that together. And let's see. Now you can use a mixer for this part. If you choose, it is easier to cream sugar and butter together with a mixer. I'm just gonna use some elbow grease. The next thing my recipe wants is eggs. But I'm gonna wait until this butter is all nice and blended. Okay, so our butter and sugar is all creamed. The next ingredients, it's all nice and mixed. It looks like one thing now. The next ingredients that the recipe is calling for is our mashed bananas and our water. Now, to mash bananas, I like to use a potato masher. It just works well. And it makes super quick work of these very, very ripe and yummy bananas. That looks pretty good. Knock that off there. We'll get everything messy. So I'm going to add our mashed bananas into our bowl. Scrape out all the yumminess. And once the water, this is 1/3 cup of water. And I'm going to add in 2 eggs. Now, according to a good friend of mine who is a gluten-free baker, when she does anything gluten-free, she makes sure that all of her ingredients are room temperature. So I've had these eggs sitting out on the counter for quite a while to warm them up, and it makes a big difference in the chemical reaction when you're baking. Baking is a lot of chemistry. What goes in to that recipe, the baking soda, the baking powder, it all has a purpose. And without one of the ingredients, your recipe won't turn out right. Or if your baking soda or your baking powder is old, it won't rise like it's supposed to. The chemical reaction won't happen. So where your ingredients come from and how old they are and what temperature they are makes a big, big difference. All right, now we're gonna add our gluten-free flour. It's asking for 1 2/3 cups, so I'm just gonna gently spoon it in. I don't wanna pack it. You never wanna pack flour. You can also sift it, but I'm just going right from the bag today. And this is a gluten-free blend of flour. It says it includes rice flour, potato starch, pea fiber, tapioca starch, and xanthan gum. A lot of gluten-free bakers have their own kind of secret sauce recipe for gluten-free flour. Right now, a lot of ingredients are a little tough to find, so I'm gonna just experiment here with our good old store-bought mix. And I have a 1/3 cup measure. I'm just gonna shake this out. So I have 1/3 cup, and I need 1 2/3 cups. Just make sure that's nice and light and fluffy, and in it goes. It also wants me to add in our baking powder and our baking soda. Very important of a difference. So I need 1 teaspoon of soda and 1/4 teaspoon of powder. So I have my baking soda. Just gonna scoop it right out of the box, shake it off to level, and then 1/4 teaspoon, very tiny, baking powder. Most baking powder cans have a nice little lip on the inside where you can level that off right there. You just scoop and slide. And I do believe I need a little bit of salt as well. Yes, I do. I need a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So I like to use coarse ground kosher salt. That's what I have here in the bag. It's a little different from the iodized salt that you get in the cylindrical can. It still is iodized. It's a little coarser grind and has just a little bit of a punchier flavor that I like. So I'm going to mix this all together. Once it's combined, I am going to grease our loaf pan with a little bit of nonstick spray, and then we're going to put it in the oven. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and grease our loaf pan. There's several different ways you could accomplish this. Today I'm just going to use a little bit of nonstick spray, but I could take this stick of butter and unwrap it and rub the inside of the pan with it. Or if I had some shortening like Crisco, I could use that as well. If I was making a cake, I would definitely put a little bit of flour in this pan and shake it around so that it was completely coated. That's called flouring the pan. And it's very, very helpful when you're making a baked item that tends to stick. So I am just going to put our batter, yum, 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 into the pan. And then we are going to bake it at 350. And I think it's about 35 to 40 minutes. I'm gonna double check that time though. Get all of it out. You worked really hard mixing that stuff. You don't wanna leave any of it in the bowl. We're going to put our banana bread, our loaf pan, in the oven. I have it preheated to 350 degrees. Now remember, when you're using the oven, be very safe. If you're taking anything out of the oven, make sure you always have your oven mitts on. Make sure there's an adult around too, just in case you need a little help. So I am going to put our loaf pan in here, right in the middle. And it says for 50 to 60 minutes. So I'm going to set my timer for 50 minutes, and then I'm going to check it and see if it needs the additional 10. So our timer's gone off on our banana bread after 50 minutes. Our recipe says 50 to 60, which is a pretty big time period. So we're gonna take it out. Oh, it looks amazing. It smells delicious. And I'm going to take a knife, just a regular butter knife, and put it through the middle and see if it comes out clean. So we need a little bit more time. We've got a little bit of some soft looking stuff on the end of the knife. So I'm gonna think it needs at least another 5 minutes. Now we do have some cooling time that we need as well before we take it out of the pan. When you're baking, you wanna be sure that you leave time to let your recipe cool because it's still baking while it's sitting in that pan. So I'm gonna put it in for 3 more minutes, and then I'm gonna have 5 minutes of cooling time, which is gonna give me about 8 more minutes of bake time. All right, so 3 more minutes has gone by. It doesn't seem like a lot, but 3 minutes in a hot oven and a hot pan can do a whole lot. And we still have our 5 minutes of cool time before I can flip it out of here. So I'm gonna test a spot just kind of near. And you know what, it's a little moist, but I'm gonna let it ride in the pan because this, even though it's a little wet, I think is going to bake off while we let it sit there. All right, so our banana bread is cooled for about 5 minutes. The pan's a little warm, but I'm just gonna flip it out here. Oh, it looks amazing. So we're nice and brown around the edges. It's nice and firm. Let's see what happens when we cut a little slice here. So this is gluten-free banana bread, so I'm expecting it to have a little different texture. Oh, actually, it looks really good. And it's still steaming. There we are, gluten-free banana bread.